So in this video we're going to look at UVing and the importance of UVing as well. And we're also I'm going to show you how to set up a script called Nightshade UV, which is not the standard UV editor for Maya, but it's one that I use that I find very useful and has lots of useful tools on top of or utilizing the UV editor in Maya. So let's get started. So UV mapping. Well, UV mapping is the process where you take your 3D mesh, you unwrap it on a 2D plane and then project a texture to it. So what we'd use is something called projection mapping. Just like a projector, it projects a 2D image onto a surface, and the UVs are telling the projection to project that texture around your mesh. So you're unwrapping your mesh to make sure that you can project that 2D texture onto your 3D object. Now, there's lots of different types of UV projection mapping. So the first one is planar, which uses X, Y, and Z values in the perspective view, and then maps accordingly to those. So you can map in the X, in the Y, and then in the Z. You can also use camera-based projection on that planar, which you use the camera, so wherever your camera is aiming, that'll project the UV. And this is quite a useful tool. I used to use it a lot, but I tend to use automatic mapping now, and I stitch it all back together how I want it. So automatic mapping, it is automatic and it sometimes does get it right, but other times, most of the time, you'll have to clean it up. Now, because I use one of the big things that is really important in UV mapping is something called Texel Density. Now that's the resolution of the texture, the UVs, and on an object, the Texel Density has to be the same. Now in NSUV, you do get a marker that allows you to actually calculate based off the size of the texture that you're going for that prop, and then apply it to the UVs. Now, I'm going to show you that as well. But to begin with, let's actually open up Nightshade UV, and you can see my really bad outliner, so I'm just going to hide that a minute. Okay, so we have to navigate to my documents. Now, I keep this folder somewhere. Where is it? Okay, so you can download Nightshade from here. Okay, and it's really good script which we're going to use. So you can download it here, and then if we just find this folder, and the icons, I'm going to press Control C. So once I've extracted the folder, I'm then going to go to my documents, wherever they are, Maya 2017 or 2016 or 2018. I will say I don't think NSUV works for 2018 yet. Go to Preferences, and then there's no icons, so what I can do is just copy this folder in. Okay, and if I navigate back to where I've extracted this and go Scripts, and just copy that folder into the Scripts folder here. Okay, and that's it. So now what we're going to need to do is we're just going to need to strike up a command. So import NSUV, and that's capital letters. So it's import lowercase space capital letter NSUV. Hit enter. There we go, it worked first time. And normally you could highlight that, drag it to the top and create a shelf, but it doesn't work, so you need to make sure you create a shelf button here. That's going to create a shelf button for you. Close. Now you can keep this on. I'm just going to turn this off. I've seen it so many times. Now, for example, if you didn't create a shelf button, you can do here under NSUV, create shelf button, and it's going to thingy. Now, if I minimize that and show you the standard one, so under here, UVs, you've got UV editor, and this is what Mayer's looks like. I really don't like the new layout of this, but as you can see, all your tools for NSUV are down here, which is really good, and you don't have to go into any of these menus and find like planar mapping or automatic mapping. It's all situated here. So let's start mapping this. So as you can see, these have already got assigned a UV, and each one of these things is a UV island. Now this is not great, you couldn't really UV from this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this out. I'm just going to isolate it so I can just see this. Okay. So in May of 2017 update 4 and 3, this is broken. This is black and white, which is not good. So we can find one of these textures, UV texture. I tend to use this one. So if I save image as, he says, that was really slow. I'm just going to call this UV texture. Click OK, minimize that a minute. We can actually assign a material to this which has got a checker. Now in this version of Mayer it's working. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually assign a new material. Make sure it's a Lambert. So that was right mouse button, assign new material. And I'm going to click a Lambert. Just going to minimize this. And I'm going to change the color to that texture file. So I'm going to click the little checker box, click File, go to my desktop, and I've now got this UV texture on here. So if I go back to Nightshade, you can see that now I've got this on and it's running. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to hit this button here and show you. I'm just going to turn off that a minute so we can see it. So you can see that it's now taken all of this and created UVs from it. Now, yeah, okay, that's kind of worked. I mean, the squares are out of shape and some of the squares don't line up with each other, so that's going to be bad. For example, if you were trying to do a scratch across here and here, that would be a bad thing. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this Texel Density. So at the moment my map size is 512. That sounds about right for a chest of drawers this size, but for this purposes I'm going to go 1024. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the object and go calculate. Now that's calculated my Texel Density pixel units. I'm just going to round this up to 5.5, or round it down even. Yeah. And then I'm going to click on this button here. So now in theory all of these should be the right size. Now it doesn't always work, but we can see in a minute. So let's start sewing this back together. So what I can do is, if I select all these faces and come up to here, I can actually split these selected vertices, UVs. So this is UV island, UV shell even, sorry. And now if I select the UV and go Control, right mouse button to shell, I can move this away so that I can then find out where I need to sew this. So let's say, so if I select the edge, and it's just like in this view here, we have face, vertex, edge and UV to select from. Now originally we won't be able to move it by face, but nowadays you can. And again, you've got the move tool, rotate tool and scale tool at your disposal. If I click this edge and then come over here, make sure I've still got it, and click this button here, which is stitch together the selected edge UV pair, it will move the pair together and now they're thingy. And if I do the same here, I can go it's because it's attached. So it won't work. And I can rotate my UVs as well by doing that. So this is your rotate tools, your manipulation tools. You can rotate slightly like that, which is not what you want. So sometimes your UVs will be rotated, flipped. So what we have to do is we have to unflip them, because we want, this would be bad if you had writing on there, because it'd be back to front. So we've got this here, which is flip UVs, and we can flip we can flip in different directions. I just right click to change that. Okay, so, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew this one together. I'm just going to undo these, so separate them. So I'm going to find where that is, so it's here. There we go. That's an issue. Yeah. So as well, when you UV, you can find a lot of issues. So you saw that it was wasn't sewing correctly, and that's because there was a face inside of there. So that's another thing you can tidy up. So the same with that one. Don't need that face. I'm going to select the edge here. I'm going to sew it. Probably not going to need that. So let's just grab this. So all I did was control, selected the one vert, two shell, and it will select the whole shell. That's sewed together. Okay. I'm holding G to repeat that tool. So just like in the standard one, it just repeats it. And what I can do as well is just move that away. I can also grab all the UVs and go up to polygons and go merge UVs. And that now means, hopefully, that's one shell, even though I separated it. Okay, so I've got my rough shape, and okay, so let's try that again. I'm going to move this up to 6. Now you can see this all, not all of it, so don't get me wrong, it's not 100%, but the majority, you can see that all the squares are the same size on all parts of this mesh, and most of it will seam together, so you have to be careful where your seam's going to be. And if we just lay this out, Now one thing you could do is, we could, because this is the bottom, put this under here, but I'm just going to keep it as separate, just in case. I'm trying to lay this out as best as possible, and when I'm scaling uniformly. I'm not just scaling one piece and then scaling the rest. I'm scaling it all together because I want to keep the same size. So only do the scale bit once you've got everything the same size, or else things won't line up. Okay? So that's the draw. And I can leave it off this space here. So we work between 0 and 1, which is here and here. Anything outside of here, it won't register. So for example, if we wanted to make this a texture, and we weren't inside this bit here, the UV island wouldn't show up on the export. So you need to make sure whenever you've finished moving it, you're working within this space. Okay, so I'm just going to move it to one side so I can, when the next bit works. So let's unhide. Okay. So again, I'm just going to show you planar. So if I select this face, and remember I need to assign the material. Remember to delete your history as well. I'm going to bring that back over. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you the different planars. So if I select that face, yep, making sure I don't have any back faces selected for the time being. So I hold Control to deselect. Then I'm going to go, where is it? I'm going to planar map this in the X. As you can see now, it's actually mapped it. Now, one thing I will do is I'm just going to come over here and go to planar. Always keep this checked, okay? That'll stop it from stretching. So you can see now it's red, so we need to flip it. There you go. You can see now it's in the right order. And we can do it as well on the, I'm going to select these faces. I'm going to go right click and then go planar, and I can use the option tab here. There you go. But you can see that it isn't the same shape, which is kind of bad. So we could just run this. And if you notice, I'm using the same texel density as I did with the draw because I want this to keep the same texel density, okay? There you go. And I can do the same here. Make sure I haven't selected anything I didn't want. Right click, and that's in the X. Okay. There you go, and I can sew it back together. Now, this is in the Y. Right, click that one. There you go. So we can do that, or we can just click automatic map, and then sew it all back together logically. It's entirely up to you how you do it. Just remember that you have to clean it up. You can't just go, oh, I'm just going to click here and go click automatic map. You can't just do that. That's not optimized enough, and your resolutions will be out as well on certain objects. So say we're ready to export this. And this is where I do a blue Peter moment. So let's have a look for. Okay. And if I okay, so we've got our dining room chair, we've UV'd it, and we want to use these UVs. So I'm gonna go up to Polygons UV Snapshot, and then I'm gonna save this out. Just gonna save it on the desktop for the time being. You can see some more games. Sure-footing as well. I'm gonna call this chair texture .tga. Now the reason why I say .tga is because if I try and save it without doing that, it's going to give me an error. So don't worry, just type in .tga and it will work. I'm going to change this to Targa, and I'm going to click OK. Snapshot complete. And if I navigate to my desktop, you'll see, I'll open up Photoshop. Now I have this UV. Okay. In this video I'm not going to show you what I'm going to do with this UV, but you can see that I have now got an outline of my UVs inside of Maya, and then I can start to map my texture in Photoshop using this plan, and that'll be in a later video, maybe next week or the week after. Okay. There are also some other tools inside of NSUV which you might find useful. So I'm just going to hide this again. I'm just going to create a square. Now, for example, if we were to say, there you go. If I wanted to say I automatic map this, and I wanted each one to have the same thing on it, I can grab all the UVs, and I can come over here and hit a tool called Stack the Selected UV Islands, and it does it automatically for me. In Maya's, we would have to actually go in and grab each vertice, go okay, and a whole V, and that snaps the UVs together. Sorry, not vertices, UVs. And I have to go around and do this automatically, which is not what I want. Okay, so let's just redo that. There's also something called a line tool. So for example, if I wanted these to align with each other and they were slightly off, I can actually do that by coming down to here, and if I right click I can tell it to align to left. Hold G to do that again, and I can do it with the top thing as well. So I can do it in this axis, so align to bottom, so right click. I can also align to center, and I can do that as well with this. Okay. So that's another useful tool that I use quite a lot. Another one is sometimes your mesh might be a little bit distorted. So what you can do is you can use, where is it? I always forget where. Unfold tool, making sure I press Q to get rid of it. And then I can also straighten the stack. There you go. And now I've got it straight again. So that's straight stack. And it's also called Smooth UV tool and Straighten the Stack. Straighten the UV even, sorry. Layout, so if I wanted to lay this out on this 1024 by 1024, I can do. If I right click on this button here, I can actually set it to 1024. So actually, let's bring the chair back on that one. So say all these bits are like off the sheet, and there's like bits over here and over here, and it's just a complete mess. What we can do is we can grab all of the UVs, right click on here, and then click apply, and that will lay out my UVs on here. The only problem is there's not any spacing, so I'm just going to change the spacing of this. Now 0.006 normally tends to work. Click apply. Really didn't do much. You have to try and... Right, so it can't be 1. So let's not 0.1 it. So you could use the legacy as well, make it 1024, and you can get these gaps in between. So it's entirely up to you guys whether you use Unfold 3D or legacy. But that's one way of laying out UVs, or you can do it manually if you want as well. I tend to keep stuff in strips just so it allows me to work a little bit easier and faster. And the rest of it is just have a play around with the different tools and see which works for you. We all have different workflows, but as long as you are, the most important thing is your texel density. That needs to be the same throughout the mesh. Okay, if you've got walls and floors, they need to be the same as well, because say you've got a brick wall and you need one piece of wall to line up with another piece of wall, the UVs have got to match with each other. So the texel density is really important for that. And it's really important to keep those the same size, not only just so the resolutions, you haven't got weird resolutions, but also if you've got scratches that are going over UV boundaries, then it needs to be. Okay, cool. Hopefully that's been helpful, and any questions, feel free to leave me a message in the comments. I try to reply to all of them, and hopefully see you in the next video.